All right, let's talk budget and what I think is the budget BS, all right, which is they're going to have more revenue than any government has in 19 years, yet they're going to run a deficit. Why are they going to be running a deficit? Because they've baked stuff into the budget, all right? They've hired a football stadium full of public servants. They've used taxpayer money to guarantee pay rises for certain industries, and, of course, there's a whole series of other spending decisions. But, Linda, as a person who's happy to defend the Labor Party faith, $1.2 billion the cost of the tropical cyclone, that's rubbish.
Well, look, I don't know what the cost is, but I think you have to take the government estimates that they're developed by Treasury.
They're always wrong. Well, they're wrong on everything. They're wrong on inflation. They're wrong on unemployment. They're wrong on every time they're wrong. This is just an excuse
by Treasury and
for why we're into deficit.
By some of the nation's best economists. So, we can have a debate about it, but ultimately this is on the best data that the country has, and that's how we develop our economic plans under either government. Here's the thing, though, Paul. There's been 3 surpluses since 2008 in the last 17 years, and all of those have been delivered by a Labor government. It's a very tough economic climate. I've said this time and time again, right across the world, and it's very hard for governments across the world to be delivering surplus budgets. It's been very hard for Jim Chalmers to do 2 already, since the last one was in 2008. But the budget should be and will be focused on cost of living relief. Do people care more about the national debt, or do they care more about being able to afford medicines, food for their family, to be able to see a GP? These are the things that matter to Australians. This is what tax is for, to support Australians and their cost of living relief.
Absolutely, and I want to see my tax go to support charities like Food Bank that are taking care of more than 3 million people. There are 3 million people that are this close to homelessness, but the federal government spends more money on ads for itself than it does for those organisations. Why? You can read it on their websites. You don't have to go fishing too hard. Look for their budget submissions on their websites for what they're asking versus what the government spends its money on. That said, let's talk cold, hard politics here. Last year, it was a many-month conversation about tax cuts, but then that YouGov poll showed more than 70% of people couldn't even name one thing the government had done for them. Cost of living still way up top before we even get to distraction issues or issues the government would prefer to be fighting on, like funding of Medicare. I think this is going to be one of those ones where keep your eye on the ball, not the spin of the ball.
I agree with you, but I think what I also see Linda's point in that I think people care about cost of living, right? And I remember seeing a poll recently which said that Labor has started to win back some of those marginal seats because of all this spending on cost of living relief. Now, this was a budget that they never wanted to be discussing. They never thought it was going to happen. So I think that's important to take into account when we're looking at how they're going to spin this. They're going to have to spin this pretty hard because there's going to be a deficit. But I think a lot of people are so focused on cost of living that if they can just announce policies that will help your wallet right now, people might not care so much about the deficit.
Again, decisions made, promises kept, all of that stuff, right? They made a decision to take $1,500, the low to middle income tax offset. Both parties went into that with the last election. I'll give you the tip. If it was the Liberals that got re-elected, I'd be screaming the house down until they had not removed that. So they took $1,500 off people in this political term. They hand back tax cuts of, $12 a week for people on $40,000. They'll turn around and say, hoopla if they hand out $500 as a cheque that you can go and get from your local Centrelink office tomorrow. It's still not the money that they took away from 10 million people.
I mean, again, I think Peter Dutton has now ruled out tax cuts in the coming election. You'll correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's my understanding. And Labor did change the tax cuts to give every Australian taxpayer a tax cut. That was the right decision. It was not the decision, you're right, Paul, it was not the commitment that Peter Dutton and the Liberals took to the election, and Labor made a decision to give every Australian a tax cut instead of those at the top end of the spectrum. Again, that was the right decision for the right set of economic circumstances.
Yeah, but they took, but
it generates more productivity for Australia's economy, right? They've done things like cheaper childcare. This gets more women into work. This generates more taxpayer revenue for the government and helps women get back to work and helps children get educated. These are good economic, productive measures.
And you'll notice then all the time that we've debated, I never argue things like childcare. I always argue that if you can nail small business policy and childcare policy, you're probably going to have a permanent majority for a couple of elections, all right, because of all of the complexities in and around it. But I just think there's going to be a lot of spin, a lot of noise. remember, there was an essential poll months after the tax cuts where people didn't even know what they were. So we're going to go through this feverish time where you and I, we're all grains of sand on the beach, but other people are very busy. So unless it's a big, clear idea that may well be economically irresponsible, but a big, clear idea, I don't know that it jumps beyond the immediate analysis of all of us in and around the budget.
I will say, though, just on the tax cuts, I remember speaking to people at the time, like a lot of people who were benefiting or were on lower incomes were vocal about that, right? But a lot of the time what we see is that people who might be on higher incomes might not be as vocal about these things, but they will be vocal when it comes to their vote. So we might see some of the pushback because bracket creep is also real, and a lot of the people that might have missed out on that are aspirational Australians or people who see that, okay, one day I might be in that bracket and I'm not going to get that kind of a tax cut. So it would be interesting to see if those people come out and remember that come voting time.
Now, I love the way this all gets spun, right? Peter Dutton did not come out today and hold a press conference and say, I hereby announce that we were going to have a referendum in our first term to give us the power to make sure that a dual citizen can be booted out of the country. Instead, a conversation about, hey, should the government have the power? Well, that might require a referendum. By the end of the day, it's spun into Peter Dutton demands a referendum. This is part of rough and tumble politics. It would work exactly the other way, but is Peter Dutton actually calling for, demanding government or opposition policy a referendum in the next 3 years on this issue?
It's not clear yet, but I think where Peter Dutton has been going wrong these past few weeks, I mean, he's always been seen as quite a strong communicator for the past few months and for this first term as an opposition leader. But these past few weeks, we've seen these policies floated that haven't gone through party room, that haven't gone through, shadow cabinet. And so then it almost looks like they haven't made up their mind. And maybe that's the strategy. They're like, let's test the waters and see what people say. But these things have not been through party room. They've not been through shadow cabinet. So I don't think we can kind of say that he is going to do it. Maybe if he sees the feedback and thinks it's not quite there, he won't. But I think it's a risky move to be floating these policies.
Well, remember, Labor was able to turn an entire election campaign falsely in 2016 into they're selling off Medicare because, a discussion paper about the payroll office and where it should work. So you float anything, it's locked in as it's going to be your idea and they're going to bash you around the head in it. I don't think it's a top order issue. I don't think that Australians particularly want to run back to the polls when it comes to referenda. I mean, you could play the same game when it comes to Albo because he says he wants 4-year terms, which means he wants another referendum. I just think, there's the political class who'll turn around and say, massive mistake from Peter Dutton. And then there's the real world that says, what, you don't already have the power to boot out somebody with dual citizenship?
I mean, I think that is a fascinating insight to learn tonight, but it hasn't gone through the coalition's party room. It hasn't gone through the shadow cabinet because I do think it is then a very risky move from the opposition leader. It seemed to me like he was making an announcement today, but maybe that isn't the case. But I think even just to be that grey about whether you're announcing a referendum or not on something as fundamental as Australia's rights as citizens, this close to an election, that's a pretty unusual move. I would have thought, and Paul, we've discussed this a lot, that Peter Dutton would have announced some more policies by now. He's got tax cuts for lunches. He's got...
No, don't verbal that one because I can bore you what that policy actually is.
Referendum, maybe. Kind of what else is he standing for? What is his solutions for the future
and that's
of Australia's
why when you've got a budget and reply speech,
economy,
30 minutes, if you don't lay that out,
I look forward to
60, 50 days out from an election, then it is going to be a form of political malpractice, no question.
I don't think floating policy ideas and then pulling them back, like he's floated tax cuts and then he's pulled them back, he's now floated a referendum, maybe he'll pull it back or not. I don't think Australians expect that level of policy greyness at this point in the electoral cycle. They expect positive ideas for the future of Australia to unite Australians. And it's unfortunate that the opposition leader is not providing those things. I mean,
well, as I said, just wait till the budget and reply. If there isn't serious meat on the table, then I will be joining you. I have been critical of some of their strategic things. There are questions people will be able to ask about those very things, right? Remember, Linda's a viewer of this program too, which means she qualifies as somebody who can come to the Peter Dutton Forum in Brisbane, which will be the Monday after budget and reply. Come and feel free.
He'll welcome me with open arms, I'm sure.
I want to come and sit next to me. I don't care. You can fly with me. All right, you'll have to pay, but you'll have to fly with me. Remember, that is pubtest@skynews.com.au. Monday the 31st.